AM 954, the voice of truth, the official radio station of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Welcome to INCRadio South Central State Satellite Studio. We thank you so much for joining us today. I'm your host, Brother Nathan Russell, joining you from Fort Worth, Texas. And today we're going to talk about career journeys because today I have a brother who's taken his career journey from being a pizza delivery person to the Marines, and then, of course, after the Marines. So can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hello, brother. My name is Brother Albert Parks with the Fort Worth district.
And you live up there in Azle, Texas, correct?
Correct, brother.
So I assume you're having the same beautiful weather that we have today.
Oh, yes. It is very beautiful today.
All right. So without further ado, we're going to jump into today's topic. And I'm going to drop the question of the day into the chat. And that is, what do you want to be when you grow up? Okay. Of course, maybe some of you already grew up. So maybe just give your thoughts, give your what your answer would have been when you were in school. Because I know at one point everyone wanted to maybe be a dinosaur or a scientist or football player or whatnot. So love to hear from you in the live chat. So feel free to chime in. But we'll go ahead and start with you, Brother Albert. So let's start when you were a kid. What did you want to be when you were growing up?
So when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a soccer player, a pilot, and an engineer.
You know, when I was a teacher, I've heard answers like that. There's like, I'm going to be a policeman, doctor, surgeon, everything.
Wanted to be everything.
I did hear about someone who was in the Navy who was a pilot, or he was like a doctor and then a pilot and then an astronaut. So, you know, you can't sell yourself short, kids. All right. So, what in school? What were your strengths in school?
I was really strong at math. Math and science were my favorite subjects in school. So, yeah, mostly science though.
Did you make good grades in school?
Oh, definitely.
All right. So you're in high school. You're making decent grades. Did you play soccer for your school?
I played soccer, but I had asthma, so that became a problem. So I switched to baseball, and that became my favorite sport. It was my mom's favorite sport, so just watching it on TV a lot, I fell in love with the game. So I continued playing baseball like throughout my life, and I still play actually now.
Yeah. What position did you play in baseball?
Pitcher, shortstop, second base when I was younger. Now mostly outfield and pitcher sometimes.
Okay. See, you could do more than one thing. You got a one-man baseball team here. All right. So, well, in baseball, did you win anything for your school or anything?
We went to the championship, but we lost in the championship. But in high school, that was my main sport. I was invited to like try out for professional teams. I actually got invited to 4 professional tryouts, and I got hurt, so I ended up not sticking with baseball as far as what my career choice was going to be.
I hear that's actually pretty common. I've actually run into a lot of people who were I guess recruited to play professional baseball and then they got hurt along the way and they didn't get to play. But okay, so you're finishing up high school. What were your main plans graduating from high school?
So once I got hurt while I was in high school and my baseball dreams were kind of shattered, I I started thinking about what am I going to do, and I remembered, people who graduated before me, seeing where they went on their college journey, and I was kind of worried. I didn't really think college was for me, so I really evaluated what I was going to do. So I saw the recruiters come by for the military, and I decided to go and talk to them. And you know, they had all the branches come to our school every so often. They would talk to kids, try to interest them in joining the military. And I saw some of their uniforms, and the one that stood out to me was the Marine Corps uniform. So I went and talked to them, and they're the ones that I ended up going with and joining the Marine Corps.
What time frame are we looking at? What decade was this?
So I joined when I was 17 is when I signed up. I had to get my mom's permission, and that was in 1999.
Okay, you're a little bit older than me, just a little bit. I graduated in 2003.
Okay.
And I know, I guess a lot of the kids may not know, but maybe 1999, not so much. But by 2003, the military was really pushing for recruitment at that time. Now, you mentioned you had asthma. I know that is an issue going into the military. Did you have to? How did you get into the military with that?
So my recruiter told me so prepping for the military, he had me start running and just to see if I could do it as far as with my asthma. And, I did play sports, so I got used to um, performing with limited oxygen, I guess, or limited ability to breathe. So I was kind of used to struggling with kind of breathing with asthma and still running. So after getting up to working at running a mile, running a mile and a half, 2 miles, I got pretty confident that it wasn't going to be a problem once I joined. And it wasn't. I really never had any issues with my asthma while I was in the military.
Yeah, just something to keep in mind for those who may be interested. Asthma can be a disqualifier from joining.
Yes.
I tried to join myself about 10 years ago. I had asthma as a kid, and I was playing rugby when I was signing up, and they were kind of giving me issues about it. It was like, you have asthma, you can't join. I was like, I'm playing a sport. Like if I had asthma, I would know it. But I actually had to go to a doctor and prove that I didn't have it. So it's something you have to consider because medical conditions can disqualify you from joining the military. Or although maybe not so much right now, they might be looking past some of that stuff right now.
Yeah, there's a waiver for everything in the military. If they want you bad enough, they can write a waiver and get you in there.
So
But yes, definitely the asthma is a disqualifier. They will not allow you to join if you are having active asthma and problems with it. Mine was more likely a childhood asthma. When I got older, I grew out of it.
right. And your story reminds me of my dad, who also he joined the Air Force, different branch, but he also joined when he was 17, and he actually said his first day at boot camp was his 18th birthday. Okay,
I've had people who had the same experience too. Their 18th birthday was in boot camp. It was
now you mentioned running, so I know for the Marines that is one of the out of the five branches or six. There's six now, because we have the Coast Guard and the Space Force, of course. Um, they are probably the most intense when it comes to the boot camp. So, how much running did you have to do for Marine boot camp?
for boot camp. The most running we did was 3 miles while we're in the military or in boot camp. But you kind of build up to that. But if you prepared before you went in, it's so much easier. But when you get to boot camp, they start you off with like a short mile run, and then they move you up to a mile and a half. Or no, I'm saying that wrong. It was a mile and a half, and then we went to 2 miles, and then they get you up to 3 miles. But it happens pretty quickly. You get up there pretty quick because you're doing all kinds of other exercising pretty much all day long. So you build up your stamina pretty quick.
And your Marine boot camp. So they're either in San Diego or is it South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken?
Harris Island and in I believe it's South Carolina. I went to San Diego, so
Much nicer weather.
uh, definitely nicer weather.
All
It
right.
still gets cold.
And then after boot camp, you typically go to military school, correct?
Yes. Well, after boot camp, you go to combat training school. Depending on what your job's going to be. So if you were infantry, you'll actually go to an infantry training school. And if you're like me, I worked on aircraft, so I went to just combat training school, which it's a little shorter and less intense, but you still, you have to learn how to be a basic infantryman, because every Marine is a basic infantryman. You can go to combat if they call you.
Right. That's one of the realities of being in the military is, let's not sugarcoat what the military does. They are involved in combat whenever the country asks them to do it. So it's not really up to the person. But okay, how long is this military school? So you went to aviation mechanics, right?
Yes.
How long was that?
So the aviation maintenance school, it was about so the first part of it was about a month and a half to 2 months. And then once you graduate from that, you pass all the tests, you go to a second school, and that school was about 2 months. And then from there, they'll send you out to what's called the fleet, where you basically go out and you do on the job training to learn your trade.
Okay. So I know I'm kind of familiar with like how the Air Force does aircraft mechanics. You have one person in charge of the plane, and typically he can, he's limited what he can do. And then you have a lot more specialized mechanics. So did you have a more of a specialized role or a general role?
So in the Marine Corps, they divide all of our uh, jobs into specialties. So I was in hydraulics and airframes mechanic. So I basically worked pretty much on the whole external part of the plane, and then all the hydraulics, the landing gear, all the flight controls. So I mean, I basically worked on the entire plane. There's just some parts of it that I didn't touch, which was the engines and like secondary power systems. I don't know if the APU, which is a backup system for the aircraft. But yeah,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't know that the Marine Corps does actually have aircraft. They actually do fly aircraft, especially more of a supporting role for the guys on the ground. Correct?
correct. For the Marine infantrymen, the our aviation guys, they're doing air support, close air support. So if they're in any trouble or any danger, uh, you know, the planes can come by and help them out.
Now, I'm curious, what locations did you get sent to in the Marines?
So when I first went in, I went to Pensacola, Florida. Um, we do deployments in the states, so we could go to Arizona. We would go there for doing like training, and then um, we would go on what's called a Westpac. It's a short 6 month deployment because of the type of aircraft I was on. We would fly everywhere, so we would fly to Japan. We would stay there. That would become our home base for 6 months, and then we would, from there we would fly out to different countries and perform different uh, ops or different training with our pilots. And basically, what we were doing was training the pilots, and we were there to support them. So we would fly from Japan, go to like Thailand, Korea, Australia, Guam, very various countries. During one 6 month deployment, we went to like 30 countries one time. So
30 countries, no kidding.
yeah, you can move around a lot in those 6 months.
So I'm curious then, out of all those countries you got to visit, which one was your favorite?
um, I really enjoyed Japan. Japan was my favorite while I was in the military, and yeah, it was. I fell in love with the people were very nice, accommodating. There's a lot to do in Japan too. I like it. I like it there.
Now, typically when you join the military, it's like what, 4 and 6 year commitments that you make?
For the Marine Corps, if you're in aviation, it really depends on how long your school is. So for aviation, you're required to do a 5 year commitment. And if you do like the infantry, they do 4 years for the Marine Corps. I know like the Army, I think they do like 3 year contracts. I think the Air Force does as well. But for the Marines, it's Well, it was 4 and 5. I'm not sure what it is now, but when I was in, it was 4 and 5. Your re-enlistments can be like 3 years.
And how long did you end up staying in totality?
I stayed 5 years. Yeah, I
And
stayed in for 5 years, and you know, I got what I wanted out of it, and I got out.
all right, we'll pause right here because I'm going to go to the comments. We have a few here, and then we'll talk about the process after the military and where you went from there. So we have our brother Clay Esmus from Fort Worth. Thank you for joining today. He's greeting us. Let's see. We also have our brother up in Memphis, goes by the name Feagle Brave Bear on YouTube. Thank you for joining us today. He's brother Bernie. He wanted to be a soldier, astronaut, and fireman. There we go. It's always three.
Nice, yeah.
Let's see. Brother Christian Agron, he said, I wanted to be many things, but I'm eternally grateful to God that he decided what was best for me. And if you don't know, he is our uh, district CFO advisor. So glad to have him on here today. Let's see. Brother Bernie says, most of all, wanted to be a minister when he was in high school, or at least a bishop like his father. Was your father in the military?
No, he wasn't, brother. And I I did get some slack for wanting to join the Marine Corps. Well, from wanting to join the military period, but then also for wanting to go to the Marine Corps. I know my mom, she initially didn't want me to go, but my dad was actually the one who kind of encouraged me to push through to it, because I at one point I almost decided not to do it because I really wanted to give baseball another try. But I think it was a really good decision for me to just push through and go to the Marine Corps.
Very good. See, we have our sister Jane, also from Fort Worth. She's greeting you. She also says, KJR says hello. They're driving to Dallas. You and me will be driving to Dallas too later on. Let's see. Let's see. Brother Christian greets us from Dallas. He was also in the military. I interviewed him last year. He had a very interesting career path of going through like nursing and then the military, and then he went into the ministry. So I
Right, right.
forgot what show that was. I wish I could refer to it. Maybe we'll have to have him back on. Sister Jane says, I never survived boot camp. And she also says Japan is nice. She wants to go back someday. All right. So we finish up your military career. So where did you go after that?
So because I worked on aircraft, and San Diego, there's so many different military installations there, and the military needs their aircraft still worked on. And so I uh, I heard of another job that was down in Coronado, not too far from the base that I was stationed at, and you know I applied there. I applied there, and I got a job there pretty quick, actually, because they needed mechanics who had experience on F-18s, which was the aircraft I worked on. So, and what they were doing there was basically taking the military aircraft, because they're pretty old, and we were extending the life of them, basically adding another 10 years so they can continue using them out in the fleet. So I was rebuilding them, tearing them completely apart, you know, and then we would put everything back together, test flight them, and then send them back to the military.
Nice. It sounds like a pretty fun job, especially if you like to take things apart. If you're mechanically inclined, would you say so?
Oh, definitely, yes. Since I was a little kid, actually, like you asked me earlier if I had good grades. So I had very good grades when I was a kid, and my dad bought me a motorcycle when I was like 5 years old. But he wasn't always there to fix it. So, if something happened with that motorcycle and I was only 5, 6 years old, I would actually, get some tools, take the carburetor out, because it would flood all the time back then. Uh, and I would fix the carburetor, put it back on the engine, and then get it started again. And I was only 5 years old.
For those who may be interested in aircraft mechanics, because I know there's always a need for that, and they do pay pretty well for the certifications. Let's say they don't want to go into the military. Are you familiar with the civilian route for aircraft mechanics?
I am. You would have to go to aviation school and get your AMP license, and there's quite a few aviation schools around here, especially with the airport being around here. So you can go through those schools, get your AMP license. I don't know how many hours it takes to get that. We were actually afforded the opportunity to get that while I was in the military, but when I was getting out, I actually didn't think I was going to continue doing aviation, but things changed. And if you do it for the government, you don't necessarily need your AMP license. So that's why I kept, working in aviation without that license. But yeah,
Okay.
you can go to school, get your AMP, and from there, you can work for any airline. With me not having my AMP, I'm only limited to government work because since they don't require it, but I can't work at like commercial, like America, the big airlines. I can't work for them with my without having that AMP license.
And A&P, that stands for airframe and something to
Airframes and power plants
and power plants.
license.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, I've heard about that. If you get that, you can get a pretty solid career going with that. So something
Yeah.
to consider for those who don't want to go to college. Maybe you don't see the value in taking a bunch of generalized classes. You want hands-on work. You want to learn things directly related to a job. Right there, and get your A&P license, and I hear it's pretty easy to land a job once you have that.
Right. Yes. There's so many people that will, so many job opportunities out there with having your AMP license. If you get that, you won't be limited like I was, where I can't go work for a commercial airline. You
Right.
could work for government, or you can work for, the commercial airlines.
You do any other type of work besides aircraft mechanic?
So, while I was in the military, I did end up hurting my back. So it began giving me problems later on. So, I transitioned from being an aircraft mechanic to being one of the aircraft inspectors, where, basically all I had to do was climb in the cockpit and start the engine, start the aircraft up, and then put the aircraft. I don't know if you've seen how they do like the afterburners, where you got the big flame coming out the back of the plane. So I would basically put the plane in afterburner and check out the engines, make sure it's good for the pilot before the pilot comes out, and then the test pilot would come, and then I would give him a bunch of hand signals to start his engines, to go through like a check flight before he goes and flies, and then I would see him off, and then when he comes back, I would get his flight report, basically everything that happened, things we have to fix. So I would lead a crew of mechanics and tell them, basically what to fix. I would have to order all the parts. Uh, that was the next job I did after being a mechanic. And then from there, I went to be a quality assurance inspector on aircraft. So when the mechanics are building things and, there's any problems, I come out there and witness their torques of bolts, like when they're tightening things. I inspect anything that they worked on.
All right. That actually sounds really cool. I would love to start up a plane and put it in afterburner.
It was a lot of fun. I wish I could go back and do that job again, because I really miss doing that.
So that takes us to the end of today's show. Any closing advice to give to our youth about careers?
I would say be flexible. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I first, growing up. I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I loved airplanes. I used to walk around my house with like a model airplane. But I would say stay flexible. Um, you never know. You can just experience different things, and something might click on you, and you'll find your career path that way.
And that's why I love this series talking about career journeys, because I think everyone that I've talked to so far had to be pretty flexible about where they went in their career. Any final shout outs you'd like to give?
Uh, Shout out to my wife and to our resident minister, Karens, for actually encouraging me to become a deacon.
Awesome. All right. So I'll give our also final shout outs for our district CFO overseer who joined us today, Brother Christian Agron, our assistant district minister, Brother Gilbert Anachete, our district minister, Brother Andre B. Silva, our executive producer, Brother Emmanuel Ndaya, station manager, Brother Arnel Solano, our CFO coordinator and CEBSI president, Brother Angelo Arano V. Manalo, and of course our executive minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. Be sure to tune in to INC Radio South Central States next Saturday at 2 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And I have one quick final comment from our brother Joshua Reyes, who is greeting us from South America. And I say that because INC Radio Latin America is coming up next. So tune in for that. You can learn a little Spanish. So have a good week, everyone. Thank you for joining.